Hey, what's up? This is Joshua, daily video blog. Today I'm going to do a really short video about, I don't know, I'm not sure what to call it. Let's say it's about growth hacking. And so on Tuesday, June 21st, I am teaching a one-night, 3-hour workshop called Stealing from Startups. And it is about how I have taken Silicon Valley ideas like growth hacking or lean development, and they've informed the way I teach, or the way that I design, or the way I come up with ideas. And I figure if they can help me, and I'm a moron, they can probably help a lot of people. So that is what this class is going to be. And I want to talk a little bit right now about how growth hacking in particular is an idea that sort of plays into my work. So for the uninitiated, growth hacking basically describes a kind of methodology of marketing that comes out of Silicon Valley startup culture, which is basically a by any means necessary approach to marketing that originates with engineers or developers. It's like a problem-solving approach to marketing. And the sort of simplest way to put it would be any tactic that improves a business metric that is testable, measurable, and with an emphasis on being as cheap or as having a large return on investment possible. So a really classic one, I can never remember this guy's name, it's terrible because I believe he's the guy who coined the phrase growth hacker. A really famous one is in the early days of Twitter. They're trying to grow the user base, and there's a statistic that something like 70% of the accounts are signed up for and abandoned. So people sign up for them and then they leave. But people have a much better chance of using it long term if they sign up for it and then come back within 2 weeks. And that was sort of multiplied by if a user signed up for, so they're looking at data, trying to figure out how to get more of these accounts that already know about the service. Like, how do you get them to stay in the picture and sign up for more? And they're looking at data and they see that there's a trend that people who follow at least, I can't remember if it was 10 to 15 accounts, as soon as they sign up, will come back within those 2 weeks. Because the theory would go, they open up Twitter, it's populated with accounts, it looks like a thing. And so you understand it. Like, oh, okay, it's a feed of ideas and notes and links and whatnot. Okay. So then you're more inclined to come back because it just makes more sense than if you just sign up fresh, no accounts, and you just go in this thing and it's empty and says, what are you doing? Or what are you thinking? Or whatever it used to say. So the hypothesis then is like, okay, well, how do you get these people to sign up? So that's when they created the suggested users list. So you sign up as part of the onboarding process. You're encouraged to sign up for like 10 to 15 or more of the most popular accounts. And what that ends up doing is getting you invested. Now, what's interesting is that's not a traditional marketing tactic. A traditional marketing tactic is almost always about raising awareness or moving units in the most sort of broad sense. It's very rarely on that sort of tactical level of involvement with the product. And if you think about what's kind of interesting here, in order to do the thing that they had done, they had to fundamentally alter the product. If you think about the idea of an app, the whole entire thing being one self-contained product, if you go into it and into the sign-up process and change it, you've fundamentally changed the product. In general, that's not something the marketing department is allowed to do. The marketing department might encourage you to talk differently about the product. They might encourage you to change the packaging of the product, but they would almost never come back and be like, yo, change the product. So that's a really kind of interesting development. And furthermore, the people that came up with these ideas like growth hacking, they're not from the marketing department. They're engineers already working on problem solving, except now that they're problem solving against a new idea. So rather than how do we make this product more fun, more compelling, look better, whatever it is, it's how do we get more people to use it, and in a way that's data driven, because like you don't have an infinite budget. So whatever you do needs to have a massive impact. And of course, what they could have done, and what they probably did do, is that you could test that user base idea. So you could do an A/B test and give half the new users the suggested user list, and half of them just let them do whatever they normally do. And you'd know, presumably, within days or weeks, depending on those rates of new signups, whether your hypothesis holds true. Now, in startups, it's super easy to do all this, right? In terms of you have all this data and whatnot. As a print designer, that's not necessarily always true, but these ideas definitely changed how we approached graphic design, because by looking at every instance of a process, of someone's engagement with the process, you can then pinpoint areas where like maybe you can amplify something. So I'm gonna share a really silly kind of example of how this thinking affected how I approach design work. So we used to do all the graphic design for an art gallery called the I'm gonna go through here, called the Soap Factory, which is a contemporary art center in Minneapolis. And when we first did posters for them, like the first year, there were always group shows, and we'd put the name of the group show and the date, and we would come up with a design that was sort of thematic, though usually very kind of like a personal reaction to it. And we never put artist names on the poster. When you flipped it over, there was like a description of the show, and that would have the artist names. So we left and stopped doing that work, and then I came back eventually and started doing it again. And when I returned to it, we started putting the artist names on the poster. Not a request from the Soap Factory. It was coming from a kind of simple idea of, okay, we need to make sure that artists who get the posters continue to share them and use them. So what's the way to do that? Let's see. Head ham. Risk my neck. So you want artists to hand them out. So the idea that we had to do that was, well, let's appeal to everyone's inherent narcissism. Every artist is going to want to hand out the flyer for the show they're in, but they're really going to want to hand it out if the big beautiful poster side says their name on it. And their parents and friends are going to want to hang the poster up more likely if their friend's name is on it really big. And furthermore, is there another idea there? Yeah, that was the idea, was like these would have a higher chance of artists grabbing a stack to hand them out and of hanging them up if we put that information on there. Now, unfortunately, that's not entirely testable. It's not like the Soap Factory sat there with a tally and was like, how many posters did this particular artist grab, and how many did they hand out, and where did they share them? But it was at least a hypothesis that got us to think differently about how we were designing the posters. And that furthermore, if we had pushed that ever still, like maybe we would have started encouraging them to put in subheads to the exhibitions that were more compelling, descriptive, and a little bit less about the themes of the show, on the hopes of sort of telling a better story about the exhibition. But we didn't really have to do that, but we did bring in this idea of including artist lists. Now, that's not rocket science, but it was a difference in thinking that came from reading more about growth hacking and lean development, and thinking about how to leverage the few things that we were doing in a bigger way. And there's a lot more stuff that we did for the Soap Factory that's along those ideas. And these ideas figure into how I teach. Who knows, maybe they figure into these videos. So that's what we'll be talking about in this workshop, is covering growth hacking, lean development, maybe some of the ideas from Jay Baer's book Utility, which I think fit into those, as well as some stuff on content marketing and social media, and sort of myths there, I think, and best practices that are not gonna help. And then talking about how I've applied them, how my students have applied them, and sort of real world corollaries, kind of case studies, and we'll go through a kind of guided workshop in how do you take a current project you're working on and apply this level of thinking. So that's a little bit about how growth hacking and these sort of Silicon Valley ideas have affected my work, and I'm going to be talking a lot more about it. All right, thanks for watching.